very special guest that I'm very excited about. So I have Robin Hedrick, who is a relatively new resident, but she's not new to River Landing. She actually has been part of our community for a long time. Robin's dad lived here, and he actually went through the continuum of care. So we thought she would bring some great experience. And then I have Dick Coe, and we were joking before we started the show that this was his idea to start doing this presentation, so I was kind of mad at him for the first time I did it. No, I'm kidding. It's turned out to be a great thing, and Dick actually worked as a healthcare administrator, so he's been in this role and has unique experience. So in the past, we have done this with slides, a big presentation, and having our healthcare folks, and of course this year's different, and I honestly thought that if I was going to be up here by myself presenting those slides, y'all probably wouldn't watch. So I hope this has drawn a good audience. But we just really wanted to start with a conversation, and all of the supporting material. I do have the presentation and some other things that I'll refer to that will be in your mailboxes tonight. So you'll get all of those details, but really we just wanted to talk about this process and what it looked like. And Dick, I know we were talking before the show kind of about your experience and your perspective on that, and that's probably a good place for us to start.
Well, thank you. As you mentioned, I spent 10 years as the administrator of Friends Homes West and their nursing unit administrator, and so I got to spend a lot of time in just the situations that we're talking about today, namely the transitions from independent to assisted living to health care. Just as a kind of overview, most of us come to River Landing and other places, CCRCs, because we have the sort of security of knowing there's going to be assisted living, health care, Wingfoot, for therapy and that. But having said that, most of us really didn't want to leave our homes necessarily to come here, and the thought of leaving a cottage or an apartment to go to Muirfield or Pebble Beach is also very daunting, a little bit scary, and something we really don't want to think about. But the sort of point I want to make as a general point is that having watched people go through the process, and it's not an easy process, and Cindy, really great that you're going to present this kind of thing so people will get some idea of it. When many folks that got to assisted living or to health care improved both mentally and physically for themselves because they were getting more help with the activities of daily living, which I'm sure you're going to mention. But it also helped if they were living with a spouse. That spouse got a chance both to know that there was good care, but also to get some rest. Taking care of someone who's in a decline, physically or mentally, 24 hours a day is not easy. And over the long haul, it's really not easy. So at the end of the process, for most people, I think it's, that's why we're here, and it's good to learn about this process and then get to know the people who will help shepherd you through it.
Yeah, thank you so much for saying that. And I know, Robin, we were talking about that before the show, about your role as a family member and not really understanding the process or what the levels of care were, who to go to.
That's correct. When my dad was here, he was doing really, really well for the first 3 years. And then he did start to decline. And it was, since I did not see him on a regular basis, I would come and visit and we'd eat and do activities. But he was starting to withdraw into himself. And in the independent living environment, he had friends and support structure that was helping him basically withdraw but not make it really plain to River Landing staff. And so it was really important when we started getting phone calls at the house with people who had concerns in the health care. I was unaware of what was actually going on with my father at the time. And these questions were taking me a little off guard. I wasn't aware of the real process. I wasn't sure what these phone calls were about. And I was lucky. River Landing was there for me. I reached out to everybody at River Landing, and they were wonderful. But we really had to draw my dad out. And I needed to be prepared to answer some questions that he wasn't prepared to answer for himself. So one of the things that I would like to mention is that if you have loved ones, family members, once you understand this process and you are comfortable with the process, please talk to your family members about it. Talk to them about your wishes and let them understand that River Landing may be reaching out to them to help make these decisions that the families are involved in. It's very important that they understand the process just as well as you do. So once you get all this wonderful information, please reach out to your families. Chat with them, talk to them. It will help the process tremendously.
Thank you so much for that. So I guess we'll start, I would like to just kind of walk through the presentation. Thanks to Dick, I have that memorized now. This is the third year that we've done it, but the presentation does talk about what you guys know from choosing to come here is that you have a continuum of care, which starts with independent living, and the next level up is assisted living. Then we have, which assisted living is Muirfield, that part of our community. Our skilled care households are Pebble Beach 1 and 2. Wingfoot, which was originally for short term and still is primarily. We're going to talk a little bit more about that because I have some questions related to that, so we'll address that. But that's also skilled care, and then St. Andrews, of course, is our memory care. So being able to function independently includes, and Dick mentioned ADLs, activities of daily living, which are the basics, being able to get dressed, shower, bathe, eat, get yourself to meals, handle all of those things. There's also IADLs, instrumental activities of daily living, which are things like maintaining a calendar, paying your bills, keeping up with your schedule, those kind of things. So one question that comes around a lot is, how do I know when it's time and what constitutes me needing to move? And I know, Dick, I don't know from your experience how you guys determine that. I know we have a variety of ways that process starts.
Yeah, we, as you say, there's a variety of ways, and it relates. It goes all the way from a spouse or family coming to us, a healthcare. We had healthcare teams for every individual, that was in our friends' homes. And when people would start coming to us saying, I see mom and dad, they're beginning, to do X, A, B, C, D, whatever it is, we also had staff, who would see things that were out of the ordinary, dining staff, maintenance people, whatever, we're able to bring up and say, hey, something's happening here. You might want to at least approach and see what's going on. So there are a number of ways in which, and sometimes, not very often, but once in a while, the individual would come and say, I know I'm not taking my medications regularly like I used to. What can I do? Things like that also are ways to do it.
Yeah.
But those are all the triggers that get a healthcare team going.
That's true, and I have had, like you, not often, but sometimes residents will come and say, hey, I'm starting to struggle. Family members sometimes come. We also have a resident assessment committee at River Landing that meets every other week, and right now that's via Zoom, of course, and it's myself and the chaplain, the folks in the clinic, and then our folks over in healthcare, where, we talk about folks we have concerns about, what kind of support can we help them with, what kind of struggles are they having, and then we talk about transitions when that's appropriate for those folks. So there are a variety of ways, and we will have in your mailboxes, part of the information that you'll be getting is we put together this great tool called Level of Care Criteria, where it just breaks down those ADLs, activities of daily living, and what they look like in each level of care. So you'll see mobility, what it looks like in independent, assisted, memory care, and skilled. So that's a tool we've really used a lot, and I introduce it now in orientation when folks move in, so we try to do a lot of education about that. So part of one of the questions that, that folks ask too is who's involved in that process. Obviously, all those folks I just named. Family typically, if there's family to be involved, staff, the resident, of course, and what that process looks like. And I'm not sure how you guys started that, but we kind of start with conversations with the resident about the need to move and the importance of that. And I think one thing I really would love to stress is what you alluded to at the beginning, is that we kind of see behind the curtain, is how I phrase that, is we know there is, when a decline starts, there's a window of time, right, that you can get that support in place. And if we don't get the right support in place, then this decline can escalate, and that's what we're trying to prevent. And sometimes when we miss that window, folks miss the opportunity for assisted living.
And it makes it harder when it actually occurs.
Yes.
Rather than having planned,
Yeah, it does, and then folks end up going straight to skilled care and they don't get the full benefit. But I've seen what you've seen, is that when we move on time and we get the right support in place, then folks thrive and have a better quality of life, which is really the goal for the whole process, for sure. And then in your material that you'll have, you're going to have a description of each level of care, again, a description of the criteria, and the level of care criteria kind of as the guideline for you to go by. And we have a great healthcare team. And Robin, I know you kind of wanted to talk a little bit, I think, about that process and who you reached out to and the responsiveness and what that was like for you when we start to talk about support staff.
Right. One of the first things I noticed is that the River Landing residents are a tremendous asset to both we who are living here and the family members that come to visit. One of the things that I first noticed that alerted me that maybe Dad was having some issues is that his neighbors would meet me in the hallway, and they would go, your dad always was such a dapper dresser, and lately he's not quite as chipper, and he's not dressing like he used to when he comes down to eat. And that was not like my dad at all. Then there was some health care people that said, well, your dad has been down visiting, and we have had conversations. He's having difficulty remembering his medications and when to take them. We've been having discussions with him about this. It alerted me to some things that I needed to talk to my dad about and get a feeling for how he was doing and what he was feeling, because what River Landing really wanted from me at that time is how is your daddy responding to our indication that maybe it might be time for him to leave independent living and get into assisted, because there he could have the support he needed. And what I really found is that when my dad did go to assisted living, I met the residents there, and so many of them, when you walk in, their doors are open and they're waving and they're saying hello, and with the fireplace, everybody was chipper, and so many of them said, we were really reluctant at first. But now that we're here, I said, it's wonderful, and your dad is going to really love it, and we're going to welcome him in. We have our own activities here. Everybody's here to help. Your dad is going to do wonderful. And almost everybody that I talked to, that I ran into on that very first day, it was basically such a positive idea that Dad was going to come to assisted living, which made me as a family member feel really good, and it made my dad feel more comfortable.
And you mentioned the staff involved, and I know because I was part of that process with you, and and I'm sure Dick would agree with this, when you get to walk with somebody through that journey, and it's hard, it's tough, but when you get that privilege of helping them get to the right place and then watching them thrive, that is really a gift. And to see the families relax a little bit and breathe a little bit.
I do want to say, because one of the things, the first conversation that we had, and there was tremendous staff support, and I was sitting at a table completely lost, and my dad had asked, he basically said, I really want to try to stay in independent living. And we sat around the table and we all talked about it. My dad, you, health care, everybody was there. And they did give him the opportunity at first because that was his desire. So it's not that River Landing just takes over all of a sudden. They actually listened to the family and the members and say, what is it that you want? And here's some options for you. Because he was given some options that, they have some care that can come in and help you for a little bit and keep you in your independent living if that's where you want to be. But you really need to show us that this is sustainable. So that was very important, and it made my dad feel good. It made me feel good. But when the time did come, my dad made the decision. He wasn't forced. But when everybody was able to sit down and talk to him and explain and show him, took him to the assisted living, introduced him to everyone, introduced him to the process and how things would work there, then he felt more comfortable, and he was the one that made the decision. He wasn't forced into it.
I appreciate you saying that, and that's, a couple things that came to mind. One, part of the staff that you were referring to is our team in the clinic, our primary care physician's office, and I always encourage residents to consider that because they are key in this process. And so when they're following you from the beginning, and of course if you have your own primary care physician, we respect that, but it just helps because they see things differently. They see a different side that I can't see necessarily. And so I know they are often part of that process with starting these conversations. It's rarely a one-time conversation where, okay, it's time to move, let's go. It's usually a process, and often we do bring other support services in when we can. Kind of our plumb line for when are we at the point where that's no longer working is if you need more than 8 hours a day or so of care, then that's when we have to say, it's really time. We have it right over there. It's right over there. So the clinic staff is part of that. And if you haven't met them, I would just encourage you to schedule an appointment and just go visit with them. They are wonderful. And then the chaplains are part of that process as well. Each household, so every level of care has a household, and this team there is we have a household coordinator who kind of manages the social work piece of the care of the residents, kind of oversees that. We have a nurse mentor. And so the presentation that you will get in your boxes has every household broken down for you, a picture of each person. And if we were in normal times, they would all be right here. That's how we typically do this presentation. We did have, and I want to give you a break from my voice for just a minute, we did have our Pebble Beach 1 household did for us a short little video. One of the exciting things now, a big part of our expansion process was that we changed the households in skilled care physically to the household model, where we're in that process now. We added the bistro restaurant over there for them, so we will all be so excited when we can actually see it. So this just gives you a little picture of that.
Welcome to Pebble Beach 1 here at River Landing. We've got some new construction that's been finished, so come on and we'll show it to you. We've got a new dining room, which is also a living room. Our residents can come in socially distant, have meals, watch TV. And we've got a wonderful new patio out here where residents can come out and enjoy the weather. Come on with it. So we're fortunate today. It seems like most of the rain has gone by. But this is a beautiful place for our residents to come and get a breath of fresh air.
And view it from their rooms.
Come on. Welcome to Pebble Beach 1. I'm Scott Reinecke, your household coordinator.
I'm LaShonda Littlefox, nurse mentor.
I will introduce you to some of the rest of our nursing staff here. We've got Lindsay, Melissa, and Denalia, all providing top-notch care to our residents, working very hard at doing it. And here's just a quick shot after the construction's been completed. Down our 2 hallways, and the new double doors will separate Pebble Beach 1 from Pebble Beach 2. Thank you so much for coming along. Hi, Scott Reinecke, household coordinator on Pebble Beach 1 here at River Landing. I'm one of the go-tos along with Shonda Lothart that help keep our Pebble Beach household running as smoothly, as efficiently as possible while maintaining optimal care for our residents. We all wear a lot of hats here. Shonda takes care of most of the clinical needs for our staff in conjunction with the nurse practitioner and Dr. Piazza. I, on the other hand, take care of a lot of the social work needs, whether it's appointments, scheduling visits, things out of the ordinary that always come up at the last minute. Shonda and I work together to make sure those things happen and happen well for our families, residents, and staff.
So that was pretty awesome. What did you guys think of that?
It's good.
I know.
Good, yeah.
I can't wait till we are able to go
Chance
see
to
it.
go over there and see it in person.
Yep, exactly. And Robin, you mentioned that one of the things that helped when your dad was moving was the tour that we did. And we talked, Dick and I, before the show about right now, transitions are a little bit harder, especially if you have a spouse involved, because when things are normal, residents in our healthcare center, if they want to come to dining over here or anything they're capable of doing, we make that happen. And especially residents in our assisted living community, those folks are still very independent and active and just an extra layer of support. And right now, to do a move where, especially if it's a spouse who cannot see their loved one, it's very difficult right now. But we are working hard. I know our healthcare team just rolled out. They've done an amazing job of keeping our folks safe, and we are so grateful for that. And we have been doing window visits, and we're starting to do outdoor visitation, so they are lifting restrictions as fast as is safe to do so.
When I was on the resident council for a couple of years, and I was the representative to Muirfield to their monthly meetings, and let me tell you, that's an active group of folks over there. I mean, they really do get involved in what they want to do, what they are doing, and maybe what they don't like about some things going on. So I was pleased to see that kind of, relationship between the staff and the residents over there.
Yeah, and what you just saw was a great example. That was Scott and Shonda, so they're the team that works with the rest of the team over there. And we also have an activity director in all of our healthcare households. We have a chaplain over there, so we have lots of staff support for those residents. And we're just thrilled that we were able to do the expansion and have all those extra things now. So, and COVID has to end one day soon, right?
Yes.
But in the meantime, I can tell you that they have worked so hard to keep our folks safe. So we're we're very grateful for all they're doing over there. Do you guys, anything else on the basics? I was going to move into questions, but I didn't want to miss anything that you might want to share. I know, Robin, you talked about the importance of sharing with your families, having a spokesperson. That is one thing that's helpful to us. So there is a part of that presentation at the end that says, what can you do to help this process? And that's something we have in there, is think about what you want. And end of life, there's all kinds of healthcare power of attorney. There's a living will. There's all kinds of legal documents and things you can go ahead and put in place to make sure that your wishes are known. And that presentation has some wonderful information on how to do that if you haven't done some of those things. And I also have all those documents available on CareMerge for folks too. So make sure you, when you're looking through it, that you go through that. And I know in some cases we have, every family dynamic, I'm sure you've experienced this, is different. And sometimes there's one child, sometimes it's a spouse, sometimes there's multiple children. Sometimes each child has a different perspective of what they would like or think it should look like for mom and dad. So I can tell you it is helpful if you have one child who's kind of the spokesperson for everybody else. And I'm sure you can attest to that. You were sharing some fun stories of things you've gone through. Yeah.
See, on the basics, I just want to mention one other thing that just popped in my mind. Long-term care insurance. Residents, if they have long-term care insurance, and many of us probably do, need to let their family members, those in charge, know what the policy is, what it entails, and what folks need to do to make sure it stays in force. Usually there's a waiting period for many people before it starts, and then in many policies every month, you have to get a proof that someone still is eligible for it, and if you don't do that, you can end up losing it. Insurance companies don't like to pay, if I may be so bold as to say that. So it really is important if folks who are here have long-term care insurance, that they know what their policy is and their powers of attorney, et cetera, know.
And that is a great place to start, because that was one of our questions. So how does our long-term care insurance fit into the transition process? So you just answered that, see?
Sorry about that.
And I didn't even have that on the sheet you knew about. That one just came in. So that's how good you are.
That's a big question.
It is a big question. And I know a year ago I had to move my mom into an assisted living, and it is different being a child doing it. And I know Tom's had that same experience. It's one thing when you're on our side, but when you're the family member having to walk through that, it's a whole different ballgame. And she had long-term care but had never talked to me about it. So I had to figure all that out, and I'm grateful I had the work experience I had to help with that process. But so you need to know what your policy states, right? Every policy is different, and some do include assisted living, some don't. And then there are certain criteria that the policy specifies that you have to meet in order to be eligible. There is typically an elimination period, which generally is 90 or 100 days, sometimes 30. I've seen that a time or two. And there is an assessment process that the insurance company goes through where they will come and do an assessment. They'll also send information to the healthcare team to gather all of that. So it's really dependent on your policy. If you need assistance walking through your policy, reading that, understanding what it means, call me and schedule a time. I'm happy to sit down with you and help you walk through that. So that's great place to start. So I'm just going to walk through these questions and you guys interject. And some of them we've touched on. So I'm wondering if River Landing maintains a file of personal wishes or desires on how issues are to be addressed if one becomes unable to make decisions or express themselves. Example, when I die, I want my body to be sent directly to a crematorium rather than going through a funeral home. Family members might not be around at the time, or their thinking might be foreign to my wishes. I want River Landing to be able to pull from a file and show what I want, or in the absence of family members, I want River Landing to follow through with what I have on file. Well, we have limitations on what all we can do, so that's why it's very important that you get all those things in place. And so a living will, healthcare power of attorney, making sure those folks understand what you want and what you want that to look like. Also, in the case of if you're working with, if you want to be cremated, or what you want that service to look like, go ahead and set up a time with that funeral home. Make sure they know, have all that figured out and written down so that it's very clear. Anything else you want to add on that?
No, I think that pretty much covers it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Is there a particular place here that people have that information?
Yes, so in the client file, when folks move in, we do ask for all of those documents. So we do have copies of those, yes. Yes. Next question. And we talked about, I touched on this for a moment, but about Wingfoot. So Wingfoot is skilled care, just like Pebble Beach is skilled care. It is the skilled care part of our community. Wingfoot, when it was initially created, the purpose was, in general, we wanted that to be available for short-term needs for our independent living residents. And at that time, we were able to kind of designate it that way. And then Pebble Beach was generally our long-term skilled needs household. About a year and a half ago, the state came to us and said, you know, the way that the regulations are written, it's all skilled care. So in the past, we were kind of able to designate, okay, long-term you go here, short-term you go there. Some residents wanted to stay long-term in Wingfoot, and so we have to allow that. COVID has changed everything, and that's kind of where this question is coming from. So, and I'm just going to go ahead and tell y'all up front. Tom is planted in the audience. In fact, he is our audience. He's our only audience. But he's here in case I need help answering some of these questions. So if his voice comes out of nowhere, it's not from the heavens. He's actually here. So COVID has changed everything in that the state has required us to have a designated part of our skilled care household set aside in case we get COVID cases. Also to be utilized if we need to quarantine folks. For example, folks coming from the hospital who may have been exposed. We don't want to just plop them directly into a skilled care household. So right now there are rooms in Wingfoot designated for that. So for example, if I'm a resident and I go to the hospital and I need to come back for a 6-8 week stay in skilled care, I'm going to go to Wingfoot for 14 days so that I go through that quarantine process. It's clear I didn't contract COVID while I was in the hospital, so I'm safe to be around other residents. And then right now, during this time, then I would go to Pebble Beach so that we keep that part of Wingfoot, according to the requirements, available for quarantines and should we have a case. So the question was, I think I answered it, but we believe that several months ago information was given to the residents here that rooms in Wingfoot that were vacated by long-term residents would remain vacant for the use of residents who might need them for short-term care. Why is this not being followed? So I think I answered that. And when things are normal, we really have not had issues with that. We generally have the space that we need. Sometimes Pebble Beach serves as an overflow for Wingfoot. Sometimes Wingfoot serves as an overflow for Pebble Beach. Next question. If only the husband or wife needs assisted living, we talked about this before too, could both or only the one needing assistance move into the assisted living quarters? Do they have to meet a certain number of criteria to be moved? For instance, if all an individual needs is help with bathing and dressing, can that be handled in the independent living quarters without having to move? And if not, could the resident hire a private source to come in and take care of that so they could stay in independent living with their spouse? So I'm sure you've had the same experience. Every scenario is different. Every situation is different. We have a lot of couples right now in assisted living, and so we take it case by case, as you were talking about. We sit with the resident, we sit with the family, we talk about what they want. If we're able to, with the space we have available, if we're able for a couple to go together, even if one of those is not needing assisted living, we've done that in the past. We've done that in skilled care in the past. So it really depends on your situation. The criteria kind of in general to go into assisted living, number one, you can look at that level of criteria sheet and kind of get a gauge for what's happening when you need assisted living. We do ask that residents who move there are able to be mobile on their own with or without a device, continent on their own, are able to manage incontinence and able to get themselves to meals. And so that's kind of the criteria to go there. And we have all kinds of scenarios. So I've got couples there, I've got a couple there with a spouse and independent. We've got that same scenario in skilled care. And again, we do look at other support services, as you talked about, in the home. If we can bring in a caregiver, medication management, we do that. If you're at the place where you need 8 hours or more a day, we don't typically allow 24/7 care because you're not going to get from that what's available to you here. And that's, as you pointed out, Dick, that's the reason you come here. So, next question, can a skilled nursing resident have a primary physician other than the one assigned to or working at River Landing? You want to answer that?
Well, I assume it's the same all over. By virtue of state regulations, when you go into skilled care, you have to have the physician that's on record at the skilled nursing unit.
Well, you actually can. So I talked to our folks in healthcare. If you want to designate a different physician, you can. However, there are criteria they have to agree to abide to. So that's why in most cases, you're absolutely right. In most cases, they won't do it. They have to be available. That physician would have to be available 24/7.
24/7, yeah.
They would also have to meet the criteria of the state and the community they're coming into of when they need to visit. Like they have to visit within 48 hours or quarterly or whatever the case is.
And having the staff down there be able to communicate directly with the doctor is important too.
Exactly.
Rather than out there someplace.
Yeah. And we've even had cases short term where someone's coming into Wingfoot, for example, for a short-term rehab stay, and their primary care says, why don't you switch over during this time, because most of them won't do it. So I think that answers that. And then the last question I had was, in today's dollars, what is the cost of being in assisted living? This is if one person stays in independent and the other moves into assisted. Will long-term care start paying when I would enter assisted? So we've answered the question about long-term care. It depends on your policy. Assisted living right now, we've got pricing sheets on all that. Everybody gets that when they move in. This year's rates, and these are rough because I don't have that in front of me, but a studio apartment's right at $5,000. A one bedroom's right at $6,000, and then your independent would be what it is now minus your second person fee. If you want additional information on that, come see me, call me, schedule an appointment. And that's all I have. I think we've been comprehensive. Anything you guys want to add? I can't tell you how much I appreciate you being here, and I'm sure the audience does too, because you made it a lot more interesting than just me, so thank you for that.
Robin's here.
Robin?
Good.
You're good? Everybody's good?
Everybody's good.
Okay, well, thank you guys so much for tuning in. And as I said, you will have the presentations, the actual slides with all this information, as well as the level of care criteria sheet in your boxes tonight. We hope you have a great weekend.